3-year-old Eric Wayne cleared away from his home in northern Wake County shortly before 2 this afternoon. At the request of the Wake County Sheriff's Department, Chopper 11 was in the air 2 hours later. Deputy Bob Hallisey joined our crew as we began a search of the woods between young Eric's home and Falls Lake. We surveyed the woods at treetop level, slowly working our way closer to the lake. Then, as we flew along the edge of the lake, we spotted the little blond boy with his 2 dogs. Their adventure was over. We landed, and within moments, Eric was in Bob Hallisey's arms.
We'll get your daddy. 601, what's the child's name? Okay, I have Eric in my arms at this time.
As we flew back home, Eric and I picked the burrs out of our clothing and looked for home out the window of the helicopter. We landed on Old Creedmoor Road for an emotional reunion between Tina Kinnis and her adventurous little boy.
Things usually work out this well?
No, usually that's why I called the major, told him to bring some extra flashlight batteries because I feel like it was going to go into the night.
No, Mama's crying because I missed you.
EMS teams on the scene say apart from some scrapes and bruises, Eric came through his ordeal unscathed. In Wake County, George Mallet, WTVD 11 News. Chopper 11 joined the search for Eric shortly after 3 in the afternoon. Deputy Bob Hallisey of the Wake Sheriff's Department joined us as we scanned the woods from Eric's house to Falls Lake. Along the edge of the lake, more than 2 miles from his home, that we found the little boy along with his dogs, Bashful and Wednesday.
Okay, I have Eric in my arms at this time.
Eric cheerfully joined Chopper Jim Lane's crew for the short flight back to Old Creedmoor Road.
I think we both got burrs all in our socks, huh?
It wasn't long before the little boy was looking at familiar sights from a new perspective.
There's your mama.
Once on the ground, Deputy Hallisey carried Eric to his tearful mother. After dinner, Eric was all cleaned up and less interested in talking about today's adventure than in showing me his collection of Walt Disney and Dr. Seuss books. But Tina Kinnis is still very much focused on a scary afternoon and her son's rather matter-of-fact explanation for what happened.
That he followed the dogs into the woods and he couldn't find the house, so he just kept following the dogs. He's scared. He said, "No, my daddy find me."
Danny Kinnis knows his son is a handful, but he's surprised he chose to go on such a lengthy adventure.
He's just always into everything, and but he usually doesn't leave the yard.
Tina sums up her feelings this way.
Relieved, but we're putting a fence up.
Yeah, Mom.
I know, honey.
A sunny November afternoon finds Chopper 11 in the desperate search. Somewhere beneath these colorful trees, a 3-year-old boy is missing. Little Eric Wayne Kinnis wandered away from his northern Wake County home earlier in the day. With only a few hours of sunlight left, Chopper 11 is called in by the Wake County Sheriff's Department to help with the search. Joining us in the skies above Wake County is Deputy Bob Hallisey.
Well, I'm looking for 2 dogs. 2 dogs. Child's got blonde hair.
All of our eyes are focused on the woods below as we slowly work our way towards Falls Lake. Chopper Jim Lane deftly glides our French A-Star along a treetop level, occasionally dropping us down into clearings for a closer look. After about 25 minutes, we are above Falls Lake. Could a little boy really make it through 2 miles of thick woods to this clearing? Within moments, we have our answer. There he is, running along the edge of the lake with his companions, Bashful and Wednesday. We land, and seconds later, Deputy Hallisey scoops the little boy up into his arms.
601, what's the child's name? Eric? Okay, I have Eric in my arms at this time.
Little ends our crew for the ride back to his home on Old Creedmoor Road. The 2 of us busy ourselves removing burrs from our clothing during the short flight. Soon, the tired little boy is perched on my lap, looking at familiar sights from a different perspective.
There's your mama.
Aren't you glad to be back, buddy? How long you been gone? I hate to see my little boy get lost.
We touch down right in front of the little boy's home, and Bob Hallisey carries Eric to his mother for an emotional reunion.
Daddy's here looking for you too.
I guess he's up.
Are you okay? You been in the water? Come, darling.
Mom, you hear my mom?
No, Mama's crying because I missed you.
Mom. I'm good, Mom.
I know, honey.
I guess you were pretty worried, huh?
To say the least.
Did they radio you and tell you that we found him out there? Yeah. You can't hardly talk, can you?
I want to go over here with Cynthia. Oh, Mama's missed you.
After supper and a bath, the day's adventures seem of little importance to this 3-year-old boy.
Lady and
He
the
seems
Tramp,
far
huh?
more interested in talking about his Dr. Seuss books than about his afternoon in the wilderness.
That bee right there.
Who's that?
Bee.
It's a bee.
Bing. Dings.
But the stay is still very much on the mind of Tina Kinnis. You see, it was just 8 years ago that another toddler was lost in this corner of Wake County. That child died of exposure.
Did that story enter into your mind at all? Mm-hmm. What were you thinking?
That we needed to hurry up and find him because I knew it was going to be dark before much longer. And was having to wait on the tracking dog to get out, and they wouldn't let nobody in the woods to look for him because they was waiting on the dog because they didn't want to mess up his scent.
Does he go on adventures like this very often?
No. Yesterday he wandered off for a few minutes, but he come back. And today he didn't.
What did he tell you when he got back about what had happened?
That he followed the dogs into the woods and he couldn't find the house, so he just kept following the dogs. I asked him, was he scared? He said, no, my daddy find me. So he wasn't too worried about it.
Eric's dad is surprised by his son's afternoon-long quest. Does this 3-year-old often light out on his own?
Not usually. He's just, I guess, one of your typical little mean boys.
How's that?
He's just always into everything, and but he usually doesn't leave the yard. He's just, I don't know. He just, I guess, wandered off to see what else he could get into.
Tina Kinnis can sum up her feelings in one word.
Relieved, but we're putting a fence up.
Reporting for Prime Time, I'm George Mallet.
Uncle Daddy's right over there. You want to go say